Hi there, my name's Renee Fox and I'm the broker owner of Fox Realty. If you're watching this video, the chances are you've just spent some time with one of our fantastic realtors looking at homes, and they've given you a couple of documents, asked you to read them, bring them back next time that you meet and sign them. So I wanted to give you some information on what those forms cover and why it's important for you to read through them and eventually sign them. So the first form is called Information About Brokerage Services. And this is a form that legally we have to give to every person the first time that we have a conversation about real estate. We've asked you to initial the bottom, but the most important thing about this form is that you are not signing or agreeing to anything. All you're doing is acknowledging that we have given you this form and that you've taken it away with you. So let's go briefly through what this form is giving you information on. So the first or second paragraph is called the broker's minimum duties required by law. So it explains to you what we are responsible for when helping you purchase or sell a home, commercial property, or a piece of land. It tells you that we have to be honest. Well, duh, but not everybody is. It tells you that we have to keep your information confidential and not share it with the seller without your permission. And it tells you that we have a fiduciary right to serve you in the most honest and best way that we can. Now, the second paragraph says a license holder can represent a party in a real estate transaction either as an agent for the owner, which would be the seller or the landlord, an agent for the buyer or tenant, an agent for both, and this is called intermediary status. This is basically when a buyer comes along that we've been helping to find a home and we show them one of our listings and they want to buy it. Now we become an intermediary, and we will talk about that a little bit later. And fourthly, as a subagent. So in the state of Texas, it's super important to understand that unless we represent you with a written buyer's representation, we as agents actually represent the seller as a subagent. This means that we cannot give you any advice, we cannot provide you with comps, we cannot discuss anything about the property because we actually represent the seller. Seems a bit odd, right? But this is how it works in Texas. So that brings us to our second form. It's the buyer's representation form, and this is quite an in-depth form. But basics of this form is, once signed, it allows us to stop representing the seller and start representing you, the buyer. So we'll go over some basic information on this, starting on page 1. This agreement gives us the exclusive right to act as your real estate agent. In other words, you're not working with multiple agents. You have said, I like Renee, I'm going to have her as my agent. And so we work exclusively with you. Second, in paragraph 5, it talks about the broker's obligations. So this is basics of what we will do, helping you find a property, negotiating the property, comply with all the provisions of the agreement. On page 2, paragraph 6 talks about your obligations, that you'll work exclusively with your agent and that you will comply with all the provisions of this agreement. Pretty simple, right? On number 8, it gets a little bit complicated. This is where you get to choose whether you allow us intermediary position. What this means is if you decide to purchase a property that we have listed within our brokerage, either with your agent or with another agent in the office, then we become the intermediary. So basically what that means is that we can no longer advise you in the process. We still do all the paperwork, we still act in your best interest, but we cannot give you advice on what goes in the contract, advice on what repairs to try and negotiate. We cannot provide you with comps to decide what offer you want to make. So it does limit us as far as how we can assist you as the buyer. Now, there are some ways around that. If your agent is the listing agent, we can assign her or him to another position in the company. And we can give you, as the buyer, a new agent to work with. And that new agent can help advise you in any way that you want. So you have two choices. You can accept intermediary or you can decline it. If you decline it, that means we cannot show you any of the listings that we have within our office. And that's perfectly fine. You, the buyer, have the choice. On page 3, it talks about confidential information. So during this term of the agreement, we have to keep all your information private. That includes things like your income, how much you want to spend, what your personal situation is, what your purpose is for buying the home, anything that could be of useful information to the seller in our negotiations, we have to keep confidential unless you give us permission to explain that. On page 4, it goes into broker fees. So here in Texas, right now, the seller pays a commission, and that commission is usually split between the listing agent and the buyer's agent. And that means you, as the buyer, generally speaking, don't have to pay any compensation towards your realtor. However, there are circumstances where you may have to pay their commission. Things like for sale by owner listings, where the owner is refusing to pay a realtor commission, that would land on you if you wanted to purchase the home. There are other instances where maybe the seller is only paying a small percentage of the commission, and in those cases, you would need to make up the difference. So this is an important conversation to have with your agent. What are your responsibilities and what do those numbers look like? So feel free to have that conversation with them next time you meet. On that same page, it's in item C, it's very clear that our commission is earned and payable only when you close on a property. So you don't need to pay anything up front. We don't use retainer fees. We don't add any additional fees, generally speaking, either. But our commission is paid when we close on your property and you are handed the keys. On page 5, item G talks about a protection period. What that is if you find a house with your agent and then you decide that your relationship with your agent isn't working out and you ask for this agreement to be terminated, but during the protection period after that termination, you then decide to go purchase that property without your agent, then your agent still earns their commission, as they were the ones that found you that house, took you through that house, and started negotiating on it. Further down that page, number 12 talks about mediation. In the state of Texas, if there's a disagreement between agents and their clients, the state of Texas recommends that we try mediation first before going to court. I think that's a great idea. It saves time, it saves money, and most things can be worked out with a third-party conversation. On page 6, number 13 is very important to you, the buyer. It says termination. The parties' agency relationship can be terminated at any time. This is kind of a safety net for you, the buyer. Say you're into your home process a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and you fall out with your agent, or you feel like your agent is not doing their job properly, they're not listening, they're not helping you find the right house, or you just don't click and get along. You have the right to terminate this listing, this agreement at any time, and all you have to do is talk to your agent. Now, your agent may have a fee in there for termination, but she can explain that to you when you go through the form on your next visit. Number 19 on that page talks about additional notices. Number 19A is important. It says brokers' fees or the sharing of fees between brokers are not fixed, controlled, recommended, suggested, or maintained by the Austin Board of Realtors. In other words, we don't have set fees for commissions across the board of Texas. Every agent is open to decide how much commission they will accept to do the job, whether they need a retainer fee, whether they have any additional fees. It is not set across the board, and that is important to understand. So my final information would be paragraph I. Broker cannot give legal advice. Read this listing agreement carefully. So as realtors, we cannot act as if we're lawyers. That might seem pretty clear, but you'd be amazed at the kind of questions we get asked by our clients, and we have to be very careful on the advice that we give. We always recommend that you have a lawyer take a look at any contract documents or any documents that you sign. However, if you choose not to, please read these agreements carefully. Make any notes on questions that you have. We will be glad to answer them to the best of our ability, and then move forward from there. I hope this has been some helpful advice for you, and in understanding these two forms. I'm sure you have a dozen questions. Like I said, you are welcome to email or give me a call and ask those questions, or you can talk to your agent the next time you see them or over the phone. We want to make sure that you are comfortable in signing these documents and moving ahead. And we're just excited to work with you to help you find your next property, whether that's your first home, an investment property, your 10th home, or a commercial property. We look forward to working with you and serving you to our highest ability. Thank you and have a wonderful day.